Hey, what's up, everyone? It's Kyle Henderson along with Anwar Richardson, beat writer for, or senior lead writer for Orange Bloods, right? It's been some time.
It's been. I'm a senior in every capacity, man. I turned 50 this year, so I get AARP, so I'm senior everywhere I go, starting in December.
Look, we're talking Alabama versus Texas. Anwar's going to ask me some questions versus Alabama or related to the game, the big game, which is week 2 of the college football season. I'm going to ask Anwar about the Texas Longhorns. Everybody remembers last year the heart thumper, right? In Austin, Alabama escapes the 1-point victory. Does Texas feel that they can win this game in Tuscaloosa this year?
I would say so. I would say that the Texas Longhorns feel pretty confident about that. Look, last year, it kind of has that asterisk thing, I think, for Texas fans, because they felt like they were playing well, came out strong, but then of course Quinn Ewers gets hurt. So because Quinn Ewers gets hurt, there's that whole of what could have been, right? That what could have been if that thing didn't happen, and we don't know what would have happened. Maybe Alabama just goes and pours it on in the second half, so on and so forth. But even Hudson Card comes in as a backup, he gets hurt, right? So they had 2 hurt quarterbacks. They end up losing, and it's a heartbreak, right? Because Texas misses a tackle. Bryce Young goes Bryce Young, right? Gets him down into scoring position. That kind of ends up being the ball game. But I think the confidence from a Texas perspective, and I'm not saying they're going to go and beat in their chest or anything like that, Kyle, but what Steve Sarkisian has been trying to do is build up a team that can compete against the Bamas of the world, compete against the Georgias of the world. And it started in the trenches by recruiting a lot better on the offensive line. I feel like they feel good about the offensive line, feel good about the defensive line and where those guys are at. So I don't think they're going to walk in there thinking to themselves, oh my God, like how do they compete against Alabama? I think they're going to walk in saying to themselves, we competed, we had a good opportunity to win. Now it's the opportunity to kind of finish what they started.
And I ask that because, like, of course you want to win every game, you think you can win every game, but like they were favored to win the Big 12. Like, this is Steve Sarkisian's team, and I think if Quinn stays healthy in that last game, Texas probably wins the game. So, when we're looking at this game and now coming back to Tuscaloosa, there's so much excitement around it. I mean, everybody's excited for Steve Sarkisian to come back to Alabama and play at Bryant-Denny Stadium. And I'm curious, I have a couple questions for you. Kind of when we look to that offense, it's electric. I mean, you got a big-time transfer wide receiver coming in. Xavier Worthy, who's phenomenal. Your tight end's phenomenal. You guys had to replace the running back, but I mean, in terms of the systematic approach from Steve Sarkisian, he's the best offensive coordinator I think Alabama has had since probably Lane Kiffin, and since the Alabama offense evolved, like Steve Sarkisian was the man, and everybody has respect for what he does from a schematic standpoint. How powerful is this offense coming back?
Yeah, I mean, if there was a blueprint to be had, Sarkisian got the blueprint at Alabama, right? The blueprint of success, which is you get in the trenches, so you want to win up front, and then have the skill guys to go along with it, right? So they've got the 5-star quarterback in Quinn Ewers. To your point, they have Xavier Worthy and A.D. Mitchell to transfer from Georgia. Many publications have said that's probably the second best receiving duo in the country. Things are subjective. It is what it is. I'm not saying. I'm just saying with these things that I read. But you have Xavier Worthy, who many project to be a first-round draft pick at receiver. A.D. Mitchell, who is very talented, had a lot of good success in Georgia in the times that he was healthy. To your point, then they have Jatavian Sanders. He's a tight end. He's projected to be the second best tight end in the country. He is a beast, right? He is absolute beast as far as that is concerned. Like you said, they're going to be in the running back room. We'll see what happens there. They lost Bijan Robinson, first-round draft pick to the Falcons. They lost Roschon Johnson, who was the backup, who ended up being a 4th-round draft pick to the Chicago Bears. So they've got to figure out who they're going to go there. Jonathan Brooks probably ends up being the guy who's going to be a starter. It means nothing to anyone from the Alabama audience. The Texas people will be very familiar with him. They've also got C.J. Baxter, who's a 5-star freshman out of Orlando. They've got Jaden, but they've got a bunch of different guys who they can throw in there. But Texas is the last time I spoke to someone, I want to say about a week or 2 ago, they felt like they had at least 8 receivers who they felt like can play, 8 receivers who they feel like can go. They've got speed, which is the most important thing. Steve Sarkisian wants deep shots. Last season, they did not complete a pass over 49 yards. And so that has been a point of emphasis for Sark is like, hey, we've got to get the deep shots going. We've got to be able to do that. They feel like they finally have the guys that can do it. So from an offensive explosiveness standpoint, there should be more for that out of that this season.
Hit the thumbs up, like, subscribe. We appreciate you guys more than you know. You can follow Anwar's great work at Orange Bloods. They do a fantastic job under the Rivals.com umbrella. I'm Kyle Henderson of Bama Football on YouTube. And we're talking the Week 2 matchup between Texas and Alabama this year. The Longhorns come to Bryant-Denny Stadium, a game that everybody is already talking about. This is rat poison, right? If Coach Saban finds out we're talking about the Week 2 game, right?
But you know what? You always say in those kind of instances, though. I'm like, Coach, you can focus in on week to week. We can focus in whatever we want to. Right? That's not our job to keep your team motivated and get ready. But, come on. Like, I know Texas has that game circled on their schedule, but there's got to be a part of Bama, and you tell me from that perspective, are Bama fans looking forward to this? Do you think that Saban has this thing kind of circled? Because Saban has this thing with, I guess, with his proteges, right?
Yeah, sure.
He has this thing where he wants to beat them, right? That becomes so what becomes what it looks like from a Bama side? Because I know what it looks like from a Texas side.
I mean, look, Alabama fans are so excited to get another shot at Texas. And I think a lot of the fans are upset about the band. They're like pissed off about whatever. Like, I'm not allowing them. They're mad about that. They're mad about like the ending of the game, how when they were leaving and like the fans and the players were kind of throwing smoke. Like it turned into like a quiet rivalry, and they haven't even played that many times. But I think what it comes down to is Alabama is excited, like from a fan perspective, and I think from the college football perspective overall, these are two of the biggest brands in college football, period. And the excitement about Texas coming over to the SEC, right? Steve Sarkisian, there's so many storylines. A lot of players transferred from Alabama to Texas. So, there's a lot of excitement about the game. And then just most importantly, the way that the game went down last year.
Yeah.
Right? I think, we all knew, at least I think a lot of people felt this way, that they just left too much time on the clock for Bryce Young. So they're excited to have another shot. Texas favored to win the Big 12. Alabama wants to get back. Coach Saban said it this summer. There's a team that has taken away what is usually Alabama's. That's the national championship, and that's Georgia. So Alabama has this mantra that they want to get back to the top of the college football pinnacle. Texas is a gigantic brand. It goes for recruiting. Coach Saban wants to be able to still go into Texas and pull guys out. So there's so much on this game. And I think when I was looking at Texas' schedule, look, depending on how this game comes out with Alabama and Texas, it's a pretty favorable schedule. I know you got some difficult games in the back. Iowa State. That game's hard for everybody, right?
For some reason, that is like a hard out for everybody who plays.
I was like, okay, win. I was like, Iowa State. And then I think Texas Tech is on the back end too.
Yes, and that's at home, but it's still, Texas Tech beat them last season.
That's what I'm saying.
You know what it reminds me of? I'm sure you're familiar with the Rocky series.
Yeah, of course.
You know what this reminds me of? It reminds me of Rocky 1 when Creed beats, Rocky. But everyone kind of wants to rematch. And then even though Creed won, it's still Apollo Creed won. He still felt like, man,
he wasn't content with that victory.
And it's like, I got to come out and get it. So of course, if Texas fans are wanting the same, but hoping that different results, of course, with Rocky too. My question to you though is, I know what Texas has coming back, right? But it seemed like Bama, when you lose a guy like Bryce Young, right? That's not easily replaceable, right? So I'm just kind of curious with the guys that Alabama lost, what do they have coming back to kind of replace it? Because I think, as from a Texas fan perspective, not myself, but fans that I speak to, I feel like they think to themselves, well, they're maybe not as stacked as they have been.
Yeah, I think you could certainly argue that, and it all stems from the quarterback. Anytime you replace the number 1 draft pick in college football and the number 3, right? You're like, oh, Bama reloads. Yeah, they reload, but not to that extent. You're talking 2 first, the 1 and the 3 pick off the NFL board. Most importantly, Bryce Young. How are you going to replicate that? You can't. Last year we talked, and I think I even went on the message board and I kind of gave people a taste. I was like, he's a combination of these. He is. Look, he's that guy. This year at the quarterback position, everybody wants to talk about the quarterback position. Who's going to be the quarterback? I asked Jimbo Fisher yesterday. He played against Jalen Milroe. And he said it was challenging because you have one of the best athletes on the field. He's 235 pounds. He's probably the second fastest player, if not the fastest player on the team. He doesn't throw the best long ball, but he's just a nightmare to prepare for. You also got the transfer in from Notre Dame, Tyler
Sure.
Buckner, who came in. He has good continuity with Tommy Rees, being that they were both at Notre Dame. And then you have Ty Simpson, who's a redshirt freshman or a redshirt sophomore now at the University of Alabama, who is very capable. So I don't think Alabama necessarily has that guy to certainly step in and replace Bryce. But I think going into the season, I would be shocked if it's not Jalen Milroe starting at quarterback.
But that, I'm curious because in the spring game, it wasn't something impressive, that you saw out of any of the quarterbacks that did. I thought you want to see like someone just kind of like solidify themselves. And the weird thing about you talk about Jalen in last season. I mean, he also had that multiple interception game. It was like a 3 interception game, was it last season? And so I'm kind of curious, like, what strides has he made going forward? Because Texas fans are obviously familiar with him.
Of course.
He was the guy that they had at one point, and then of course it is. So I'm kind of curious what strides he's made in this offseason. What have you heard?
I think we're still trying to figure that out, to be honest. I think, when we talk about Jalen Milroe on the YouTube channel, people are like, turnover machine. The guy will turn the football over. But if we judge all the guys by the first couple times that they play the games, I mean, you wouldn't have a good player. I mean, you kind of rewind when Mac Jones, people did not want Mac Jones to start at Alabama. They didn't. He was one of the most efficient quarterbacks ever. And he won a natty, and he was perfect during the COVID year, right? So in terms of what has he made in terms of progression, I think he's tried to win over that locker room. He took a lot of the guys over to Florida, a lot of the wide receivers. I think there was a couple that didn't go. Working on that team leadership, and anytime you have the quarterback as your leader, it helps the overall room. It's a cliche, but it's true. But in terms of like throwing the football 25 yards downfield, I want to see that too. I don't know if he can do it because he didn't do it in the spring game. And neither did most of those quarterbacks. And we don't know what Ty Buckner can do because when he had opportunities in game, like he lost to Marshall, he lost to Ohio State. Then he got hurt. Then he came back and he looked pretty decent towards the back end of the season. So we don't know what's going to happen at the quarterback position. We really don't for the first time in a while. And that makes it exciting for me to talk about.
Of course. Because
it's the quarterback. But around Alabama, what else do they have? They have some better wide receivers this coming season. Malik Benson is a transfer in. I think he's going to probably be one of the top wide receivers in the SEC. At the running back position, you have an arsenal of running backs. You had Jace McClellan coming back. Everybody remembers him from last year. I mean, he ripped off a big run for a touchdown.
Correct.
Behind him, you have Roydell Williams, who's now healthy as well. And then you have a couple guys who are up and coming. Jam Miller. You have Justice Haynes, who's a freshman. Scored 3 touchdowns in the spring game. People on the larger networks are like, he's going to be the guy as a true freshman at running back. Which is, I mean, I don't know if that's true, but he'll probably get touches. Then you have Richard Young at running back as well. Offensive line anchored by J.C. Latham, who we'll hear from at SEC Media Days. He's probably a first-round draft pick. And then on the defensive side, you have to replace William Anderson, and we talked about. You have Dallas Turner coming back. People know Dallas Turner, right? Everybody knows Dallas Turner. Hold on, I know people. I know Dallas Turner really well. The weak spot could potentially be the inside linebacker play. We don't really know who's going to be the inside linebacker. Now, they could be good, but usually when you don't know what's going to happen, it's like it could potentially be a weak spot. Secondary, very strong. Kool-Aid, best name in college football.
Correct.
Dude is named Kool-Aid. And then he's like, he has the NIL deal with Kool-Aid.
Wow.
They like switch Twitter handles or something like that.
That's impressive.
Special teams, you return Will Reichard. People know that name from Texas.
But so what? I'm just kind of curious. I know you got some more questions for me, but let me ask you one more. What makes Bama so strong at home? Like I've heard these crazy numbers about like what do they only have like 1 loss and since like that's 100 years or something. And I know I'm joking around.
I saw them lose the last time that I can remember. They lost to LSU, and that was that LSU team that won the Natty. That team was. They were filthy.
It ends up being one of the best teams in college football history.
They were so good. We
didn't know it at the time.
No, we didn't.
We didn't.
But I mean, the way that they orchestrate, that's another show.
Sorry.
Greatest teams of college football coming up next. Alabama added these lights to the stadium, and it took the atmosphere like through the roof. So you have Bryant Denny Stadium. If you've been to Tuscaloosa, and if you're from Austin or a Texas fan coming into Tuscaloosa, we'll put up some links, and I'll trade you out like places to eat and where things to do. You know.
Okay. Perfect.
The tailgate, you have like 45,000, 50,000 tailgating. It's the SEC like tailgate, and then that fills over to the stadium. I would like to see. I think a lot of people would say that the fans need to get a little bit more chaotic, right? Because I don't think you like Texas A&M. It's a rowdy place, right?
Yeah.
I would assume Texas is too.
Sure.
But like Alabama fans, I challenge them to get a little bit more amped up, and I think they will for that Week 2 matchup. And that's something that Nick Saban likes to see as well. Is challenging. Look, road games are tough regardless. We know that even working on the road is tough.
Yeah.
But Alabama plays well at home. They're tough to beat. The crowd's going to be into it. And it's an electrifying atmosphere. You definitely got to come check out Tuscaloosa. It's just a challenging place to win. And, Alabama, I think, favorites by 7 going into this game.
I mean, I'll have to check out Tuscaloosa on game day. I mean, impossible to book a hotel in that city. So, I mean, I'm in Birmingham with the common folk is where I'll be.
Yeah.
That's where it happens.
I mean, honestly, you can't, if you try, week on and week off, you cannot stay in Tuscaloosa. So, I mean, that's just how it is.
That's okay. Well, I'll get there. All right, what else you got for me? What else you want to know?
I want to ask about the Texas defense because we've talked about this offense so many times. We know who's returning. And then I have one more on the back end about Quinn Ewers that I wanted to ask you before we go. Because I just read he lost like 20 pounds, or he's cut down 20 pounds, right?
Yes.
Okay, but give me kind of the overview of this Texas defense and where their strong suit is.
Well, the strong suit is with their linebacker by the name of Jalen Ford. He was a preseason Big 12 Defensive Player of the Year, so that was just voted on just a couple of weeks ago. He's the thing. He's that guy. He's the gel. He's the thing that makes that engine go. He ends up being the guy that will be the most impactful name that you'll probably hear, throughout the game. So you got to keep an eye on him. They've got some good DBs. Ryan Watts, very good defensive back, a big, strong defensive back. You're not one of them skinny guys. I mean, he's at that 6'2-ish, 6'3-ish range. He probably had a good one. I got to go maybe 190-ish, 195-ish.
It sounds like Kool-Aid.
Yes. But you see him, you're like, oh, damn, that guy's big. You got probably 4% body fat. It's that crazy thing that our trained eyes kind of get a chance to see. Jahdae Barron is good in the secondary. Well, they've also got some safeties that they're working into the rotation. And Jaron Thompson ends up being a guy who's been there for at least 4 or 5 years, something to that effect. But he's a solid guy. And then up front, the interesting thing about that game last year was I did not expect Texas to be able to penetrate up front on the defensive line. I didn't think that they would be able to get to the quarterback and affect him and impact him the way that they did. It caught me off guard. I mean, I'm not going to be honest with you. It caught me by surprise. They've lost 2 of the guys that are up front. One guy's name is Keandre Coburn. Another guy was named Mario Jomo. Both guys end up being late draft picks, and those guys are gone. But the Texas staff feels really good about 2 guys that they've been going in. One guy is by the name of Byron Murphy, the second. In the defensive tackle position. Another guy's by the name is Tavondre Sweat. Tavondre Sweat is a guy that people are looking at and projecting to be a future NFL pick. Wow. So he's a bigger guy, a little bit taller. Murphy is viewed as one of the strongest guys on the team. And they don't feel like there's going to be that much of a drop-off. If there's going to be a drop-off at all, to be quite honest with you, they feel really good about those guys up front. And then on one of the edge guys is a guy by the name of Baron Sorrell. Finished with about 5.5 sacks last season. He's a guy that they're projecting to take like the next step up as an edge rusher. They've got some guys on the other side. Ethan Burke is going to be a name that they're going to be trying to rotate in and see what happened. So he's going to be a little bit of a younger player that they're going to have to try to generate. But they feel good. Gary Patterson came in, kind of helped them out a little bit, but Pete Kwiatkowski's there. It's still overall his defense. And the thing about Texas, it is kind of like, it's going to sound like Alabama, they've got their 2 deep. Like they feel like if they go to the bench, there's not going to be a drop-off from a defensive standpoint. So I'll guarantee you that they've been working on a game plan for Bama the same way I know last offseason. Gary Patterson was working for weeks and months trying to scheme about what they could see from Bam, and it worked. You know, you could see that they kind of, I think, caught him off guard. I think they're doing the same thing right now because they opened up with Rice. So no disrespect to Rice, but they probably are focusing a little bit more on trying to get ready for Bama, and so I think the defense, you know, it'll probably be about the same defense that you saw, maybe a tad bit better.
How good is Quinn Ewers at quarterback? Talk about his transformation from last season into this season.
So the hard part when it comes to young players, especially young players who dominate in high school, is for them to get to college and realize you just can't get away with just by being you. Like, you're going to have to start putting in that work in order to take and go up to the next level. I think the problem that Quinn had when he got there at Texas, especially as a first year as a starter, hadn't really played since high school, and he didn't understand the work that it took to be an elite quarterback. You know, and again, he had some times where it looked good, but and then it was like, oh snap, this is what it takes. The film work that it's going to take, the weight room stuff that it's going to take, like the dedication to my body. So what Quinn has done all off season, you know, his goal was obviously is to go pro after this season, and that's what it was when he got here at UT. He realized that in order for him to do that, he's going to have to take some steps forward. So there was a change of the diet, you know, so he's changed his diet. He started working out more, you know, so cutting out the bad food, so on and so forth, and that helped him. The workout, he took a lot more seriously. As you saw that picture that maybe went viral of all the Texas quarterbacks and all their six packs, but he really, you know, he cut weight and then to try to build up a little bit more muscle. Not Jalen Monroe kind of muscle. It's a different kind of muscle there. We've got to see how that works for him. And, you know, you don't usually big quarterbacks are more injury prone. So we'll see if he's got the flexibility as far as that's concerned. But, you know, that's what he worked. And then he also really dedicated himself more in the playbook and really studying a lot more. There was a criticism of Quinn last season. And I remember there was a little controversy in Austin where during spring break, Quinn decided to go to Mexico and go on vacation. And there were people who in the UT brass that said, wait a second, he's your quarterback. Like, he can't be out here just going out and having a good time and, you know, being like everyone else. And so some of the people who were the Quinn defenders like, no, he's a young guy. No, you just need to let him live. And then Quinn's like, yeah, I ain't going to Mexico this year. I'm staying. You know, he's got the same quarterback trainer as Patrick Mahomes does, that he's had him since high school. So he just devoted himself to that and really just getting into his craft. Sarkisian has praised him. You know, when spring was over, he's like, that's our quarterback. Like, hands down, there's no controversy. Last year, it was a battle between Casey Thompson and Hudson Card as far as who's going to be the person. He nipped that in the bud. This is his team going forward. They feel like he's done everything the right way. I hear things from behind the scenes that, you know, a lot of people, there are people who project it, but do believe that he's going to be a first-round pick. And then, you know, they believe that, and so apparently he's been doing everything behind the scenes the right way. Now, the last thing I'll say on this is, if you know this, it's the easiest season to win is the off season, because every off season narrative is always positive.
Of course.
So we've heard, and so I can tell you, we've heard nothing but the positive. Now it's just about making sure that translates.
Yep, absolutely. Anything else you got from me?
No, you know what? I didn't really ask you much about the defensive side, you know, of Bama. You know, you told me a little bit about, you know, the offense, but I hadn't asked you about the defensive side. And I got one more fun question for you after you tell me about the defense.
So Alabama's defense, when you look at it overall, I think the anchor piece in the center is Jaheim Otis. Jaheim Otis came to Alabama. He was like, I don't know, it was something crazy. He was like 380 pounds or something. He was just he was a mountain, but then he shred all this weight. And man, he's done an amazing transformation. He's that big plug in the middle. They got Justin Mbogbe, very athletic defensive end, down in the dirt type guy. He has a lot of experience, played in 4 games last year, had a shoulder injury. Outside linebackers, Dallas Turner is going to be that guy. I think he's going to also potentially be a first-round guy. When you look to the next year's draft, you have Kool-Aid, Dallas Turner, and probably J.C. Latham as the 3 staple first-round guys. Opposite of him, you have Chris Broswell, but you could have some younger guys start to maybe even challenge that just came in. Keon Keeley is a 5-star that came in. Yanzi Pierre is a 5-star that came in. There's a lot of talent at that outside linebacker position. Really impressive. Interior linebackers, it's going to be interesting to see who kind of emerges at that spot, and I think we'll have to continue to see that as we go into the August season. Deontay Lawson is someone who played in the Sugar Bowl. I just watched that rewind, and man, he's a very good player. So Deontay Lawson probably going to be the inside linebacker. Secondary, I love the secondary. I mean, Kool-Aid, I think, is a first-round draft pick. We'll hear from him during SEC Media Days. You can watch that video right here on our YouTube channel. Opposite of him, you have Terran Arnold, very capable athlete. But you also brought in Trey Amos and Jalen Key out of the transfer portal. Those are two guys that came in and I think are going to push for different spots. One, Amos at the corner position, and then you have Jalen Key, who came in from UAB, that could potentially play in that safety position.
Okay.
You have a freshman phenom by the name of Caleb Downs. Caleb Downs.
What position?
He's a safety.
Okay.
And man, my goodness, like this guy, he's it. I mean, there was 2 freshmen this spring that Saban talked about, which he never talked about freshmen. Justice Haynes and Caleb Downs. He's like, no, these guys, like, they're putting in the work. They're capable. They're going to play. Caleb Downs could potentially start as a freshman. That's how good he is. Malachi Moore returns. He's got a tremendous amount of experience. He's back there. He could play that star position. He could play safety as well. And then you also have you know, I think there's some other secondary pieces in that second fold. Jake Pope, Earl Little, you know, there's a ton of guys, Christian Story. So they're very deep in the secondary, and I think they're going to be up for the challenge of these wide receivers from Texas. That is going to be the game. It's going to be, can Alabama's secondary go against Texas's phenomenal wide receiving unit, and can Alabama get pressure on Quinn and his new kind of body type if he's a little bit more mobile? And I think that's what it comes down to. And also, how is Alabama going to facilitate that quarterback position? I guarantee you that the quarterback competition is going to be settled in week 2, because I think Jalen Milroe starts during the first week, and I think everything is going to be up to him to keep that position going through week 2. Like if he falls off the rails or if he turns the ball over twice, we've seen Saban make a change at halftime and put someone else in. And look, I'm telling Tyler Buckner didn't come from Notre Dame to Alabama to sit the bench. None of these transfers do. None of them do. The transfers come here to start, period. So there's a lot of people who are like, oh, it's his team. Well, no one's going to come to be the backup.
Yeah, sure.
I wouldn't. Would you go somewhere else to be like, to sit the bench?
No.
Or to be like second in your job? No. You're going somewhere to be the man.
Correct.
So Tyler Buckner, he's very athletic. I think he's very similar to Ty Simpson. But the quarterback position, we don't know. Sure. I do know that this is fact. Jalen Milroe started when Bryce Young was injured against Texas A&M. And when Bryce Young went down against Arkansas, they didn't go with a 2-man, rotation. They went to Jalen Milroe. I'm going to ask Sam Pittman the same question that I asked Jimbo. He didn't get an opportunity to prepare for Jalen Milroe, but he played against Jalen Milroe. What were the challenges of playing a 235, 240-pound quarterback that runs a 4.4? It's challenging. So, but the defense, secondary, love it. And, that interior linebacker play, I think we'll just have to see if it's a weak spot or not. Maybe some guys will step up. I mean, it's Bama. Right? It's like, wow, shocker, an incredible inside linebacker at Bama. No. There's guys there. So.
News at 11. All right, so here's my question for you. This is my last thing for you. This is my last thing. And this is not an X's and O's. Yeah. This is more of like a philosophical kind of thing.
Love
it.
Yeah.
We sit here in Austin, and once every couple of months, we see a clip of Nick Saban complaining about NIL, right? And in Austin and Texas, we're sitting here, saying, listen, I mean, we got the money. We can spend it. Like, we don't know what the problem is. And we hear Nick Saban complaining. Now, I have a theory, and I want you to tell me my theory is wrong. Okay? My theory has been that Nick Saban has had such a control over recruiting for so many years but you only complain about the things that bother you because potentially you might be losing control. And my theory is he's upset about that because he knows that programs like Texas could be in the mix for guys that they normally would just be able to grab and not think twice about. If I'm wrong, then tell me what's Nick's real beef as relates to NIL?
I think it's just that. I think there's other programs that have much deeper pockets than Alabama. And as you said before, I mean, before it was like, okay, we can put you in the NFL. We can, showcase you on national TV. You're going to play at the highest level against the best players. But now necessarily when it comes to NIL deals and, putting money in these players' pockets, I don't, it's hard to compete. Like Texas A&M, they just went into Alabama and pulled one of the top wide receivers out of Phoenix City. Because the money is there. So I think it's going to be really challenging. And I think when we look towards the back end of Nick Saban's career, these are challenges that, he didn't have to face. He didn't have to deal with transfer portal for the majority of his career. He didn't have to deal with now NIL. And those are things that are out of your control because now a player can hop into the transfer portal and hop back in, right? It's like the players have much more control now. And I think that is going to be challenging for Alabama going forward. Does Alabama have money? Absolutely. Do they have some of the best facilities? Absolutely. But I think that's Nick's gripe, and I think that he wants to talk about a competitive balance, making sure that everyone has the same amount of money. That's not the case.
Correct.
When you have, the amount of money in some of these other programs, even USC, look what they were able to do.
Sure.
Look what the additions that they were able to pull in.
But does it to the victor goes the spoils? It's like, well, okay, yeah, you could be the Yankees or the Red Sox, and you can afford that, or you could be the Rays and figure out how to win, without being able to spend that kind of money.
Well, that's why it was laughable. I mean, somebody was talking to Jimbo Fisher, and they asked him yesterday. They were like, look, all this money that you guys have and the salary that you make, like, how does it feel when you hear the word hot seat? You're like, there you go. I mean, you have everything at your disposal, but the end game is getting to the playoffs and getting the national championship. And it doesn't matter, like, you could have all the amount of money, and if you can't get it ultimately done, then you're not cutting it. And this is the world of college football. And I also think with now players that I'm never afraid to be critical of players, but as soon as you can start getting paid, you're going to be treated like a pro athlete.
Sure.
So if you're not cutting it, like, that's it. Welcome to the pros, right? And you're going to have your money, but, we're going to be critical of your playing time, just as we should. The best players should play absolutely, and that's how it is in Alabama, man. But I wanted to talk to you about it. I've been talking about Alabama and Texas so much.
I know.
It's like Alabama quarterback situation, then I'm like, second hot topic, Alabama, Texas.
And I mean, look, we got it in back-to-back years. I'm disappointed that in 2024 they're not on the schedule. In Texas, the next big dog will be Georgia. No pun intended for them to have going for it. But I'm hoping every couple of years there's a rotation that goes along because this would be good for as long as, Mr. Saban is around because, I mean, he's not getting any younger. So, I mean, and I don't know how long he's going to coach.
Man, he's just still got that, like, dog mentality. He's aging better. I mean, he
does look good now.
He does look good.
He's become a vampire.
And yes, 100%.
He's a vampire.
And he's always said, he's like, until I'm not making a difference within the program, he was like, and I feel good and I'm healthy, he's like, I'm going to coach.
The only thing I'm going to say, last I'll say is I just wonder, to your point, with transfer portals and NIL, like at what point does that take a toll? It's like, man, this is not what I got in the game for, and I just don't know how much longer I want to do that. That's the only thing I wonder. State of Alabama, the rate that they produce millionaires will not be at the rate that Texas produces millionaires, or a lot of other programs will be able to produce new millionaires. They will be able to have more. So just kind of wondering. That's a big picture topic, but but I was just
I think you're
outsider always thinking in.
Yeah, I think you're absolutely right, and I think that's going to continue to play an absolutely huge role in college football until there's really some strong margins put around it. But right now, it's kind of just the Wild West, where we're at.
You mean what used to happen, but just wasn't in front of everybody else?
Yeah,
closed doors?
Right. Yeah, we're like, oh yeah. Okay.
Yeah, and we all know those stories.
Hey, well, thank you very much for watching us. Anwar Richardson, Orange Bloods, does an amazing job. If you're following Texas football, you already know who he is. My name is Kyle Henderson, Bama Football on YouTube. Hit the thumbs up.
Make sure you follow him, by the way.
Yes,
please
follow
do.
me.
That's my guy.
I appreciate you guys. I appreciate all the support. There's a lot of strong editorial writers out there. There's a lot of people that do some amazing videos, creative content, whatever. We respect all those guys who are putting on the work. We're coming to you from beautiful Nashville, Tennessee. One more time, hit the thumbs up, like, subscribe, and we'll catch you next time down in beautiful Tuscaloosa, Alabama, when the Texas Longhorns take on the Alabama Crimson Tide. Perfect.
That was awesome, dude.
Yeah, man. Appreciate